Trigger warning mentions of SA. If you cannot handle that, please scroll on. Spiritual warfare, prefer to remain anonymous. Hi, I'd like to submit a somewhat long story about how me and my family endured spiritual warfare, sleep paralysis, demons, etc. So to start out, I was assaulted whenever I was 12 to 13 years old by a family member. Immediately after it happened, I was overcome with this overwhelmingly sense of fear. Fear of revealing their identity and of being punished for it. I finally mustered up the courage to tell my parents what had happened, and when I did, that's when the spiritual warfare began. I am so sorry to hear this. The night I told my parents, my dad had to walk out of the house due to how upset he was, and my mom stayed with me. He was out walking for about an hour before he returned, and then we sat down, talked about what happened for hours. My parents held me and cried with me. That night, when I laid down to go to bed, was the first time I experienced sleep paralysis demons. It was a 10 to 12 foot humanoid black figure pacing on all fours at the foot of my bed. It had glowing yellowish eyes and stared unblinkingly as it paced. I couldn't move. I was petrified. I squeezed my eyes shut and desperately prayed, Jehovah Shalom, God of peace, grant me sleep. I opened my eyes and the figure was gone. I breathed a sigh of relief and closed my eyes, trying to go to sleep. Lo and behold, about 15 minutes later, the figure was back again. I felt its presence before I saw it again. Pacing back and forth, glowing yellowish eyes, I prayed the same prayer and it disappeared, only to return another 15 minutes later. This went on for months. At one point, it was so bad that I would hear between 12 and 3 a.m., mind you, someone stomping up and down the stairs when nobody was there. My bedroom was directly underneath the stairway. I was sleep deprived, still having PTSD flashbacks, anxious and depressed. Then added stomping was unbearable. It was like they were taunting me. I was too afraid to tell my parents because I didn't know if that would make the sleep paralysis any worse. My parents obviously could tell that I was struggling and they supported me the best they could, but without knowing about whatever the heck was happening at night, there wasn't much they could do. It wasn't until one night where my parents and I knelt down, placed their hands on me, and prayed that God would heal me from my assault trauma that it went from bad to worse. That night, after my parents prayed for me, there was surprisingly no figure. I was glad and happily went to sleep. I woke up to the sound of my mother shrieking hours later. Startled, I threw the comforter off and rounded the corner to the living room. There was water pouring into the living room. I live in a 2-story house, and my room, as I said, is under the stairway. The only way that water would be pouring into the living room would be if there was something wrong with the plumbing or a tree had fallen on the roof and broken through the entire first story. But there was no storm that night, at least no physical storm. My mother was standing on the edge of the living room on the other side of the waterfall, now cascading onto our couch, and my dad came down from his office at the sound of her shrieking and stared in shock for just a moment. My older brother had already made it downstairs and was moving the couch out of the way. My dad snapped out of it and began to help while my mother was sobbing and was screaming for my 2 little sisters. I immediately ran upstairs and shook my younger sister awake and grabbed my youngest sister. There was water coming from the bathroom and flooding the hallways, about half an inch of water. Come to find out, not even an hour after my parents and I had gone to sleep, the piece that attaches to the toilet to the wall in the upstairs bathroom had burst and flooded the bathroom and hallway before the water sank into the ceiling and then through the drywall, and then cascaded into our living room. Nobody was hurt, thank God, but still traumatizing. And none of my siblings knew about my assault, so this was just a wild something out of the blue that happened to us. Nope, I don't believe it. Anyways, we got the water turned off and called neighbors to come and help us dry up the floors and stuff. Everybody slept in my parents' room that night. I felt safe enough to sleep with my siblings and parents there to go to sleep and not be afraid. But early that morning, around 6:30 a.m., my parents woke up early to assess the damage and have a Bible study. This is when they experienced weird things too. My dad opened the Bible study in prayer, as one does, and my parents began reading the Bible. As soon as they did so, however, the power went out. Thinking nothing of it, because there was literally a waterfall in the living room, how surprised are we that the power is out? My parents began using their phones as flashlights. When they did that, however, their phones started blowing up with notifications, text messages, emails, etc. Irritated, my parents shut their phones off and began using handheld flashlights from the garage. They got a little further into their study when they heard doors slamming upstairs and the sound of someone running from bedroom to bedroom as if someone was looking. Freaked out, but not trying to act like it, they excused it as the AC, but the power was out, so there was no wind to push the door shut. They called out to me and my siblings' names, wondering if it was us somehow, but no response. My dad told my mom to stay put while they went upstairs and searched each room and bathroom, but found nothing. Eventually, they finished their study, and as soon as they said amen, the power came back on. It took my family a few months to get everything back to normal. I still dealt with sleep paralysis after that, but my parents made sure that I had someone sleeping with me in the room so I wasn't alone. I think they were freaked out after that too. Feel free to use my story for your content. I have more if you like. Love watching your videos. Blessings. Firstly, OP, thank you, of course, for sending in your story. Secondly, God, I am so sorry, so exceptionally sorry that this happened to you. Not just the haunting portion, but the things that you endured. This is just, it's horrific. And I always say this, there's nothing that I can say and there's nothing that I can do. I just hope that sharing your story brings you some shred of peace that you're not crazy and that these things actually happened. I say this all the time, and this is a hill I will die on. My Roman Empire, if you will. One of them. The demonic energies, when they feel that someone is at their most vulnerable point, is when they attack the heaviest. If you're vulnerable, they want you. They want to try to feed off of your faith. They want to feed off of the sadness, the sorrows, the pain, the angst. They want to feed off of the trauma and everything that you have in order to get their end goal. And it's horrific, honestly. It's terrible because as if matters weren't already terrible, they have to continue doing this shady, creepy shit. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, it's just a coincidence that the lights went out. I don't believe in coincidences, okay? If you're here and you believe in coincidences, you are on the wrong page. Let me just tell you something. Bad things happen in threes and so do good things. And if that's the case, how could coincidences be reality? You know, it just doesn't make sense to me. I think whatever this was wanted to scare all of you and wanted to scare you away from your faith is what it sounds like. I mean, what an odd time for the lights to go out when the Bible is being read. And I'd be curious as a previous Christian, I would be curious to know what Bible verse was being read. Do you know what I mean? Again, I am so sorry for the experience that you've had. Please know that you are strong, you are kind, you are smart, and you are worthy. And of all things in the world, violating a family member is high up there on one of the worst possible things that can happen, especially in an experience of said family member that's being violated. So I just want you to know that this was not your fault and you deserve so much out of life. I love you guys and I hope you have a great day. To this day, I don't know how or why this happened. It started a few years ago. I'm 23 now, so I was 16 or 17 then. Some family stuff was happening, so me, my little sister, and one of my little brothers were staying with a family friend. For some context, I do not cry in front of my siblings unless we're all crying. Now, I could go back, but then I wouldn't. I was depressed and it was break, I think fall or winter, so I had nothing to do. I was worried for my mom's living situation and I was just going through it. I've been able to see or feel, kind of communicate with ghosts my whole life. Not much now since I'm pulling away from it. My first time was I saw my grandpa in my dreams when I was 4 or 5. He died 2 months before I was born. I didn't see him until pictures, didn't know it was him. My mom said I woke up crying. She grabbed a photo album and I pointed him out. Anyway, so when we got to the family friend's house, I immediately felt something. I heard movement upstairs and remember asking, who's upstairs? And then looking confused, saying, there's no one upstairs. Also, I just felt something. I play guitar and the quietest place was the kitchen. I would sit there and play, then hear or feel something. Then the man appeared. The house had 2 rooms. One door faced the couch I sat at every day. The door to the room was always open since 2 boys were there and my sister. I saw a black figure standing there. He was standing stiff with his hands at his sides, feet apart just a little bit. Times he had a colored aura around him, sometimes nothing at all. He stood there every day. I was the only one who could see him. The friends we lived with always argued, and it felt like he was adding to this anger, or feeding sometimes. Later on, I found out it was like a guilty feeding. I don't know. So, one colder night, it was a bad argument. The door was a 2-wide door. It was locked. I remember looking at the shadow and deciding, fuck it, I'll stand exactly how he's standing. So I get up, walk over to where he is in the doorway, turn to look at the couch, and I felt him move. He reached up like he was behind me and put his hands on my shoulders, then pushed down. I felt all the weight and I couldn't breathe. This is what I saw. First of all, I might have read into this a bit too much, but I genuinely think I just put the pieces together. It was in flashes of pictures and colors of emotions. I'm going to tell his story. Usually I bring this up and feel him looking over me. Not mad, more wondering if I really want to tell people. I feel him now, but he's letting me, not to make it seem fake. He was taken advantage of and bossed around by the woman in his life. I'm sorry, there's a lot of grammatical errors and I'm really trying to figure out what the words are, so I apologize. It started with his childhood, pictures of his mom favoring his brother and sister or walking behind them. Then his girlfriend. His girlfriend was from a more well-off family, used to luxuries and getting what she wants. She gets pregnant and her family pushes him to marry her before she has the baby, so he does. He loves her. They have a baby girl. He's working a lot and takes care of the baby. When he gets home, she goes shopping and complains. He wants to be able to buy things for his wife, so he gets more hours. Then she accuses him of cheating. He explains it's more hours. I remember this part vividly. The baby is crying, so he stops arguing to go grab her from a bouncer in the living room by where the couch is now. Then the scene is out of the four I remember the most. This is the second. He's doing the dishes while the baby is in her bouncer. I see her wearing a white onesie, pink tutu, and a pink flower headband. She has barely any hair now. Okay, so it kind of sounds like that was the argument where this shadow thing came out. I'm trying to kind of put the pieces together, but this is a little everywhere. Not to say anything bad about the OP that sent it in. I'm just giving context. Wife walks in and slams divorce papers on the counter. He sees them cited and starts begging her to wait. She has a bag and a purse with her, by the way. She was coming by to pick up the baby and walks to the side door, was the front door for the family friend. This is the most vivid part for me. He's on the porch watching her put the baby in the car seat, get in, and drive off. He stands there for a while. Then there are a few moments of him sitting in the room, now the kids' room he stands in the doorway of. The end I don't know for sure. I know he ended himself, but it debated hanging or shot. Now I think it's shot. After this, when he lifted his hand, I immediately felt like he didn't mean to send so much. He was apologizing, not in words, but in my head. I walk past the playing kids, him leaving the doorway for the first time to follow me, apologizing. I started crying and burst through the door to interrupt them arguing. Very out of character for me, I'm shy. They stop yelling to ask what's wrong. I tell them I need to go see my mom. It's around 10 p.m. The guy didn't come. The girl walked by me in the kitchen saying she had to grab her keys. I remember standing in the kitchen by the sink she served him on and him apologizing. I said it's okay, but leave me alone or something like that. He did. I walked to the porch, same porch, and waited. I don't remember how much I explained, but I must have looked terrified since they were there pretty quick. I went to my mom crying as she explained what I did. Then after a few minutes or an hour, I explained to them. When I went back, he wasn't talking to me anymore. Also, myself and the family friend girl talked about it and other stuff that happened in that house while I stayed there. Now, this is where the random thing about me crying in front of my sibling comes up. A few months after that, when I moved out, I was hanging out with the family friend and the people we now lived with there when she said she was like passed out, thought how much I cried about on the couch. That freaked me out because I don't remember crying and the kids were always in the living room with me. After asking around, everyone who lived there said basically, yeah, you cried a lot, sitting on the couch crying almost every day. That scares me so much. I would have never done that in front of them. Anyway, I get it if this feels fake, but it's not. I've had many different experiences, but this one stuck so much. I remember my mom trying to calm me down and it was freezing. Also, a side note later, like I'm talking when I was 21 or 22, I was telling my aunt who I was just starting to live with about it, and she said it seemed similar to what I think it was her cousin's wife who left the daughter and lived in that house and unalived himself. Described what he looked like, a shorter guy with his hair buzz cut, and he was muscular. She said it looked like him. I'm not completely sure if she was telling the truth or not, but it did line up a lot. Still unsure if it was even true, but that was just way too much of a coincidence. Thanks for reading. Love your videos. Found them not too long ago. Okay, bye. OP, thank you so much for sending this in. So it kind of sounds like there was this kind of dark entity that was following the family around, feeding into the energy. Husband and wife were fighting a lot. I'm assuming these were the family friends. They had a daughter. She wanted to leave, and the day that she left with the baby and served him the divorce papers, this entity kind of grew stronger and was mentally talking to you kind of like telepathically. I definitely believe your aunt that this was someone that she knew, especially if she knows that this person passed either in the house or was close to these people. A lot of times entities do latch onto people, especially if they are earthbound entities, like if they are a demonic entity, they do latch onto people, but they can latch onto more than one person and like haunt more than one person and really, really demonize the life. But I think that this entity was more so trying to help you through what you were hearing and what was happening. Very interesting. Can't wait to hear your guys' thoughts. And I love you guys. I hope you have a great day. Bye. Hi, my name is Katie, and I have a lot of stories about spirits starting from when I was about 3. I have always been sensitive to the paranormal. I'll share the scariest spirits that I've lived with in this story. My husband and I moved into his great-grandparents' house in 2017 while I was pregnant with our oldest. It was a little old house in a very small town in Louisiana, population of about 200 people. Kind of spooky, but with lots of character. My husband worked until about midnight most nights, so I'd be home alone, usually getting things ready for when our daughter was born. I noticed small things at first, shadows out of the corner of my eye, the occasional thud when no one was in that part of the house, and cabinets being open when I knew I had closed them. One day, I woke up and swore my neighbors were fighting because I kept hearing doors slamming. Nope, it was the cabinets in our half bathroom that kept opening and slamming shut on their own. I saw them open and slam shut twice before I walked out and closed the door. This would begin happening every day, never at the same time, but once it started, it would last for about 10 to 15 minutes. Then we had the swoosher, some kind of black cloak-looking thing that would swoop from one end of our hallway to the other. Picture the Suriel from Akotar. My husband and I would see this most nights after we went to bed. At the time, all I could think was, thank God it waits until we're in bed. We never really felt threatened by the swoosher, but we definitely made sure to use the bathroom right before bed so we wouldn't have to get up once the swoosher made its appearance. Then we had the peeker. This may have been the same entity as the swoosher, very similar in looks, but this one would just peek at us from around corners. My husband noticed this entity first. He was sitting in the living room playing a game on his Xbox when he kept seeing someone peeking from the hall, so he got up to ask me why I was being a weirdo. But when he got to our room, I was asleep, snoring. He said he called it at night after that. Then we had the tall man. He hung out under our carport. Didn't really bother us that much. Scared the hell out of us sometimes when we'd take the dogs out to go potty, though. Then we had a little girl spirit. Child spirits are they're so scary. The house next to ours was once a doctor's home, and way back in the day, he'd seen people at his home. The story is that this little girl was brought to his house and her appendix ruptured. She passed and her spirit stayed. My husband's grandfather told us this story. His parents would have known the doctor and the little girl. She was a trickster. She would take my husband's lighters and move his things around. She loved to take our keys and hide them. My husband's great-grandmother and great-grandfather both passed away in the home, so their spirits were also there. He would just sit in his chair, which we kept in his same spot just for him, and would make our daughter laugh after she was born. His great-grandmother was a different story. She lived a hard life and was referred to as hard old Cajun woman. She liked to mess with me when I was in the kitchen. I'd be at the sink doing dishes, and cabinet doors would start opening one by one. I'd say, "Annie, that's enough." We moved out of this home in late 2018, and it has since burned down. I look back at our time in this home with fond memories. We got engaged, married, and had our first child while we lived there. It was our first home as a family. Thank you so much for reading my stories. I have more from my childhood home, also in a small Louisiana town, and I'd love to share them. OP, thank you so much for sending in this story. A lot of different entities going on, a lot of different scariness. I don't know what it is about familiar entities such as the grandparents that freaks me out a little bit more than just like regular demons and entities. I don't know if it's because like I can't cope with the idea that like they're there but I don't get to like see and talk to them all the time. I don't know what it is, but it freaks me out more than like regular entities. I really love though that you were able to hold all of the good memories from this home, especially since it burned down. It sounds like you took away the good and kind of left the bad, and they burned with this house. It's very sad what happened to the little girl. I know back in the day they had way less of the modern medicine we do now, and they probably weren't able to save her because they just didn't have the means. And that's terrible. That's horrible. No child should die before their parents. All of the things peeking and slamming cabinets, the ones that are kind of unidentified, or the one that kind of like swooped, now that would have sent me. I think that I probably would have been incapable to sleep, just because what the fuck are you doing in my house and why are you messing with me? Like, come out and let's have a word as adults. You know what I mean? I truly, truly, truly love this story. I am happy to share any and all stories, so please continue sending your stories as you wish to write them in. I am happy to share them, and I love you guys. I can't wait to hear your comments on this one. I hope you have a fantastic day. It sounds like your grandmother was kind of calling to you, is what it sounds like to me, at least. When we were children, me and my cousins would often visit the local graveyard, where some of our relatives were buried. We would sit in front or lay on the graves. The graces in our country are very big and about half a meter above ground, much like a small tomb. We could stay there for hours from evening until late at night. We chatted while lying on our great-grandparents' grave one day. I believe it was around 11 p.m. Night sky full of stars. That day, I was alone. My cousins had left a few hours earlier for a trip. I don't know why, but I started to talk to somebody. At the time, I was around 10 years old. Somebody or something, I don't know, but I eventually felt my eyes getting heavy. I got up to leave, but something caught my eye. I turned around. Nothing. I don't know what I was thinking. I walked closer and closer to where I had seen the presence, or what you could call it. It was like a force pulling me towards itself. That was when I noticed I was going towards the field with the olive trees behind the cemetery. In my 10-year-old brain, this was a sign to run. I tried. I failed. My heart sank and I started panicking. That's when I saw a gray presence right in front of me. It looked corrupted. I let out a scream of terror that could wake up a town, but no one came. It was late after all. But when I thought I was done for, I heard a voice telling prayers. I think I had heard it before. It was an old videotape my dad had recovered a few months ago. It was after my great-great-grandmother's. After what seemed like fractions of a second, it was morning. I was still laying on my great-great-grandmother's grave like nothing had happened. My cousin found me and said they were looking for me and were worried sick. When I got home, I made the excuse I had fallen asleep at the cemetery by accident. They believed me. Above the fireplace, there was a now picture with a familiar face that was also on the grave that I was laying on. The picture wasn't on the fireplace yesterday, or ever, but everyone was acting like it was always there. I never sat alone at the cemetery again, and never after sunset. OP, thank you so much for sending this in. It definitely sounds like it was your grandmother calling to you. I don't know if there's some type of bad juju in regards to olive trees, but I'm glad that your instinct kicked in and said, bad news bears, let's get out of this situation that we just put ourselves in. That's a fantastic idea. I also kind of find it odd that just at 10 years old, you were allowed to go and just like hang out at a graveyard. I myself, my mom was very protective and definitely, she didn't let us do anything really, like in general. We couldn't like spend the night at friends' houses and stuff. When we got to around like 12 and 13 is when she was like, yeah, go do what you want to do. But she always knew where we were. We had cell phones, etc. So we were very well watched. But it kind of sounds like you guys had free range, which is to me odd, but this is culturally different, obviously. So I would be curious to know if maybe putting that picture up was kind of just something that you abstained from seeing as a child. Although children are observant, I can definitely see where you would have been like, like I've never seen that picture before. It could have been there. It could have just been something that we didn't really take into effect in our cognitive. Can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this lovely short story. And I love you guys. I hope you're having a great day. Bye. Ghost stories. Both myself and my son have been paranormal investigators since 2019. We both have abilities. My son is 32 and autistic. We decided one day to go to an old psychiatric hospital near us that's pretty legendary. It's 8 small cottages set in a circle. It reminds me of a roundabout, with tunnels connecting them all to the main treatment center. We decided to walk the grounds and take pictures. Especially number 8 is the worst. They all are very haunted, but 8 is severely haunted. Before it closed in 1999, they used to basically torture patients there. Some would escape into the neighborhood in nightgowns or completely naked. Also, some would unalive themselves in the tunnel or in their rooms due to the horrible conditions there. After taking these pictures, I had them on my phone for several months. The day I deleted them, I fell asleep on the couch and had a horrible dream of people in robes chanting in my living room. I could not move for what seemed like forever. Then when I woke up, I noticed I had a scratch on the top of my thigh that was in the shape of the letter A and 3 lines in it. Then 2 weeks later, at midnight, a plate that I had left in the middle of my kitchen table with a fork on it flew across the kitchen and broke into a million little pieces. We did go back to the location months later while they were remodeling it to put homeless vets there. We were able to talk to them, and on my recorder you can hear big boots stomping around me. I told them how sorry I was for the horrible treatment they received, but thanked them because now we get much better treatment. Short and sweet, we love it, Queen, yes! Also, it is Autism Awareness Month, so happy Autism Awareness Month. OP, thank you so much for sending in this short but sweet, very interesting story. I want to know what this asylum is. I want to know where it is. I assume that you left out those details on purpose. Totally fine if you are watching this or see this and you want to message me just to let me know so I can do a little bit of digging. I'd appreciate it because I would love to look into this. I'm curious to know though if your son experienced anything, because if you both went there, it almost feels like maybe whatever it was, it kind of latched only onto you based on your description. So I would be very curious as to know whether or not your son also experienced something. I wonder if the ghosts were like almost offended that you deleted the photos, because it kind of seems like they were like, hey, those, you were supposed to keep those. Those are our memories. You know, like you guys were there together. You know what I mean? I love that you thanked them, because obviously we're turning this building into something that is for vets. It's something that's supposed to be a positive, uplifting scenario. So I do love that, but I don't necessarily think that they are obligated to accept the thanks because of what they were put through. Again, I would really love to know where this is and what this is, because it kind of sounds like there is a mass majority of patients that were mistreated, and I would be interested into looking into those facts and finding out kind of the ways that they were mistreated. Obviously, there's a lot of different places in the United States especially. I'm not well educated on other areas, but in the United States especially, that people were 100% mistreated. There were things that were being done that were illegal. There were things that were being done that were beyond, you know, nightmares that you could imagine. So I would be intrigued as to find out exactly what was named, because, you know, they're not always going to include everything, you know what I mean, unless it's like a court of law that deemed this place to be unfit and labeled all of the things that were happening to each individual patient, which some of them, it seems like they might not have even had some type of justice for what happened to them. Thank you again. I love you guys. I hope you're having a fantastic day. I had a terribly crazy earthquake, like right underneath my house yesterday. So I spent the evening putting my house back together. Luckily, it doesn't seem like there's any structural problems, but it was absolutely crazy. It was insane. Probably the worst earthquake that I have ever been through. I've lived in areas that have massive earthquakes, and that is one that I felt to the highest capacity. I mean, I heard the rumble of it before it even got to my feet. And I mean, I just kind of kicked it into mom mode the second that it happened, because Cash, as you guys know, is disabled and he is not steady on his feet already. So having an earthquake underneath him was not a very swell idea. So as soon as I realized it was an earthquake and everything was falling off the walls and flying out of bookshelves, etc., I jumped and grabbed him and put him at a safe place on the couch. The way that we have our couch, it's kind of angled to where there's an area that's safer for him, like it's padded on all sides. So I just put him there and then checked on all the remainder of the animals and my partner and just made sure that everyone was kosher, because it was pretty insane. With that, I love you guys and I hope you have a great day. Bye. Is the ultimate fear to have your tootsies grabbed in the middle of the night by something unseen. Our story is one about my grandfather. When he was young, he was a heavy drinker, and on his way home from a night at the bar, he says he doesn't remember why, but somehow he felt the urge to take a pathway home through the woods, even though it was dark outside and it was much longer than the usual. While walking and sobering up a little, he hears music and laughing coming from within the woods and decides to investigate. So he follows the sound and ends up on a small clearing where there are 3 men sitting around a campfire, playing the guitar, singing songs, and just having a good time. They invite him to stay with them and have a couple drinks. Obviously, a drinker like him isn't going to say no to free booze, so he stays. They sing and laugh, and suddenly, the songs that the men start playing sound strange, like a different language or no real words at all. He starts getting dizzy and tries to fight it, but eventually he falls asleep. When he woke up, he was no more than a meter away from a cliff. He had rolled over in his sleep. It would have been his end. Understandably furious, he walked back to the path and to the clearing to look for them, or anything that they might have left to identify who they were. But when he arrived at the exact place he spent the night with those men, there was nothing. No campfire, no wood, no ashes, no place to sit. But he knew it was right there because he found his own stuff there, a pocket knife and one of his gloves. To this day, he swears it was gins playing a prank on him, and since then he has stopped drinking. The second one happened to myself. I was maybe 13 or 14 at my aunt's house alone with my cousin, who's about 4 years older than me. I've always looked up to him because we share the same zodiac sign and are quite similar personality-wise. So when he started getting into satanic rituals and whatnot, I was on board with anything he wanted to do out of fear he'd be disappointed in me. So that night, when we were alone, he suggested to do a ritual he found in a satanic spell book to summon a random demon in the living room with some candles, a piece of paper he wrote symbols on, and an offering he placed in the middle. He lit the candles and made me say the words with him. At first, nothing happened, which we both expected, but all of a sudden, we hear footsteps coming from down the stairs. The sound of the stairs is unmistakable, so we both froze in fear and looked into the dark hallway, but there was nothing. Then we remembered that it was probably the cat and laughed a little, but I just knew something didn't feel right. My guts felt heavy like I had swallowed stones, and my throat was so dry I couldn't swallow right. Not long after, our parents came home, and when they did, I just froze again and stared at the door. There she was, the cat, coming home with them and drenched because it was raining outside. She couldn't have been home. It was impossible. My family is very religious and extremely opposed to stuff like spells and rituals, so I couldn't bring myself to tell them and just tried to go back to sleep. I had to sleep on a mattress on the floor in my other cousin's room and was facing the door with my feet. There was maybe half a meter between the end of the mattress and the door. As I was trying to fall asleep, I felt like I was being watched, but I was so tired that I was about to pass out, so no fear could have kept me awake for long. But every time, right when I fell asleep, I felt something pull hard on my right ankle. The first time I gasped and looked around, but there was nothing there. So I thought it was just a muscle spasm, because I heard that can happen when your body is extremely tired. I put my head down, closed my eyes, and again, right as I was falling asleep, my leg gets pulled, this time a little bit harder. I ignore it and try keeping to sleep, but the third time I slid off the mattress and my foot hit the door. I was now sitting on the floor, shaking and crying out of fear because there is no way my muscle could spasm so hard that I fly off the mattress feet first. I slept in my cousin's bed that night, and the next day I told our parents. They gave us hell, but also called someone to clear the house of any spirits that might be there. And after that, nothing happened anymore, and thankfully, my cousin stopped doing stupid stuff like that. I have never in my life been so scared, unlike that night. OP, thank you so much for sending this in. I did read your very kind words in the beginning. Thank you so much for liking my content, and I am absolutely about to talk about this story. First and foremost, I've said this in a lot of videos, and I will say it again. It is the ultimate fear to have your tootsies grabbed in the middle of the night by something unseen. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I would jump on my bed because there's monsters underneath it, duh. And I used to make sure that I was covered head to toe. I did not want my ears showing, and I did not want my feet showing. As an adult, I am very different. I still do not like my ears to show because they get cold very easily, but I definitely hang my feet outside of the bed. Perfect opportunity for demons to be grabbing me for sure. Obviously, I think that the satanic ritual definitely had something to do with this. The jinns that you mentioned initially with your grandfather's story, I believe it was, it definitely could have been jinns, or it could have just been that maybe he was so incapacitated at the time that this was all something in his head. Now, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying that there is the possibility, as I know a lot of people who deal with alcoholism, and they also imagine things when they are completely incapacitated. And a lot of times they don't even remember it the next day. What does freak me out a little bit about that story is how clearly he remembers it. Now, with alcoholism, I do know that the more that you drink, at least to my knowledge, okay, I'm not saying that this is scientifically proven, but the more that you drink, the more that your body gets used to the amount of alcohol that you're using. That's why we have the term that's used commonly for functioning alcoholics, right? And because they can get normalized to that, they are able to remember a lot of things, where as someone who doesn't drink on the regular may just black out from drinking so much. If he was sobering up on the walk, though, I feel like the small amount that he would have drank wouldn't have affected him as much the next day, which makes this even more of a terrifying story, because if it wasn't all in his head and it wasn't something that he just imagined because he was so incapacitated, then it was definitely something out there. Could he have walked across some residual energy of people that could have passed out there, and that was the last thing that they remember, so that's what they're repeating? Absolutely. Could it have been gins? Absolutely. Could it have been SWs? I don't know what area you live in, but the possibility is definitely there. So I'm just really glad that he was okay and he was able to kind of make it through the day, because being really close to a cliff's edge, waking up that way, unless you're a rock climber, like professionally or for funsies and super experienced, I'm going to say that might make you shit your pants, you know? I'm glad that you guys told your parents in regards to the second story. I'm really glad that they brought someone in to clear the negative energies, because dark witchcraft like that is not something to mess with. Satanic rituals, not something to mess with. So I'm really glad that there was some type of reinforcement there. And obviously, this was a lesson that did need to be learned. I'm not sure that your parents needed to really give you hell, because it sounds like you learned your lesson from the experience itself. But I am glad that it was kind of reiterated within that small amount of hell that they gave you, just because something like that is very detrimental and obviously can unleash something much larger. I love you guys. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye. We definitely believe you over here. If I saw my phone in fucking midair, I would be freaking out. Freaking out. Short and spooky. Hi, I don't know if this is long enough for you to share, but if that is, it would be amazing. It is always long enough, you guys. You could send me like 3 sentences and I would read it. A few years ago, around when I was in first grade, I am now a freshman in high school, I remember my mom's really good friend had died. I still don't know how to this day. Probably a good thing. If your mom is abstaining that information, there's probably a very good reason. One night, we were all watching television. It was winter, so I was curled up in front of the heater with my blanket. My parents had went outside to smoke. This was a very normal thing at that age, and I remember the house just feeling off. The TV was paused. I was left in silence with the heater on. For the next part, you're going to need a little context. With my house, there is a front door connecting directly to the living room. Then from the living room, you can either access the kitchen from one side or the hallway from another. I still remember it very vividly to this day. It looked like a normal shadow you'd see on the street of someone who was just standing in the sun. Mind you, I was completely alone in the house. The figure seemed to be 2D, walking into the guest bedroom at an eerily slow pace. Me being quiet, young at the time, I got so scared, I threw my blanket over the heater in hopes to hide myself. I guess. LOL. After this, I've had very weird occurrences. One I can remember was a few years ago at the start of COVID. I left my phone on a table. I had gone to the bathroom, and when I came back, I kid you not, it was mid-air and it fell. Everyone I tell still thinks I'm crazy to this day. Every once in a while, I'll see shadow figures, though it hasn't happened in a couple years. I can sometimes feel a heavy presence in my room at night, and the house just feels very off ever since that day. If you would like to know more details on that, let me know. Yes, we want more details. We want more details, always, forever, and always. Always, 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 more details. Very creepy. I feel like when you're at a younger age, things like this, it's almost I don't know. I can kind of go both ways. It can either be less creepy because you have more of an imagination because you're younger, right? Or it can be more creepy because you don't know what it is that you're looking at, but these terrible, scary things are still occurring and you're trying to make sense of them. When you're an adult, I feel like you have to make the decision, right? Either you believe it and you acknowledge it and you risk allowing it to feed off of the fact that you're acknowledging it, or you take the risk and you ignore it and allow it to either go away or get worse because you're ignoring it. So as an adult, I feel like you kind of have this in between where you're making a hard decision either way, but as a kid, you have this ability to kind of say, like, is this something that is real? Is this something that I'm experiencing? Because you are less known to the world. Like, there is less acknowledgement and education as to what you've experienced in life. So being able to differentiate between this is something that's actually happening and this is something that's not actually happening is much greater than you are when you're an adult. Because when you're an adult, you're like, there's no fucking way that I am imagining this. Like, I saw it. I experienced it. And when you're a kid, I just feel like that experience can sometimes be downplayed, especially when you're talking to other people about it because, oh, well, you're just a kid. Do you know what I mean? Can't wait to hear your guys' thoughts on this one. I love you. I hope you have a fantastic day. I'm very hopeful that I will be starting my podcast very soon. I am getting my TikTok Monet from this month tomorrow. I'm recording this on the 14th, so I should get it on the 15th. And as soon as I do, I will be ordering the last couple of things that I need. I do have something that's coming in the mail, although it has not shipped yet, which is pretty disappointing because I am very impatient. And I need to get a frame for that, and then I have a friend who is making me something, and then I have a few other things that I need to buy from the store. So I'm hopeful that I can kind of get that going. Obviously, I found the platform that I want to use as far as like editing and recording. I already have a microphone for it, which is it's McGee, thanks best friend. She bought it for me. She was like, hey, I'm investing in your future. She's so cute. I love her. We've been friends for like over 10 years, so that's neither here nor there. We're family at this point. But I just wanted to give you guys that update. So hopefully the room reveal will be coming soon. And then along with that, I will be filming and posting more videos. There will be posts from the podcast. I will be posting the podcast on several different platforms. I will do a whole video on it. And once I get to that point, and have the first episode recorded and ready to be released, I'll probably do a video on it. And then I will be posting the full videos on my YT. If you're not following me there, definitely go do that because I am also going to be posting like 32-hour long compilation videos of all of my spooky story times. So they will be in order of one another if there are multiple parts, etc. So if you missed a story, you can go there and you can just have an hour long of story times. And I love you guys. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'm so excited for this new chapter. I cannot freaking wait, and I'm just really excited for it. I love you guys. Bye.